Welcome to Military Faith and Spiritual Resilience. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. With me is Erin Nichols, nutritional and fitness coach and Gold Star wife. Hi, Erin.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Thank you for being willing to continue your story. At the end of the last episode, you were sharing how Sam and you found a new normal, a new way to live where you could still cherish one another and your love could grow, even if it's in a very different way than you'd originally thought that it would be following his injuries. Now, you mentioned earlier that Sam and Erin needed to be Sam and Erin. Mm-hmm. And it seems like with Sam in a care home, that would very much continue to be the case. So how was that? What did you do to bring balance into your life with Sam at Care Meridian and you needing to have a life of your own?
Yeah, so we had to kind of get to a point where we weren't literally in survival mode. People had been telling me since the very beginning, you need to be able to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup, all this stuff. And I tell that to other people too. I have clients who have family members with significant needs. And, I tell them that too. But especially early on when there is no new normal yet, that hasn't been established, and you're just overwhelmed by everything, it feels like another thing on your to-do list.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I did little things here and there, I suppose, but it wasn't until after we'd been back home and he was at Care Meridian for a couple months, and I told the family, I need a day. I'm going to start taking Saturdays off. I'll always be on call. I'll never be away from my phone. And if you don't want him to be alone, then that would be a great time for you to go see him.
Great idea.
And so the only thing that kind of the only obligation I gave myself on Saturdays was I needed to go to the gym. And it started off, I think I was running on the treadmill, I was doing some weights, whatever, and then I saw these classes going on. There's cycle class, and there's like Pilates and yoga were the classes at that gym, at least at the time. And so I kind of got the courage to try this Pilates thing, and I really liked it. My instructor was training for her first half Ironman distance triathlon. And after, I guess I'd been doing this for a few months maybe by the time I had kind of got the nerve up to join this Pilates class. Well, when I had started running on the treadmill, I was running too hard, too fast, too long, whatever, in not great shoes, and ended up partially tearing my MCL.
Oh, ouch.
So I had to rehab a knee, and then cycling was part of how I was getting the strength back in my leg and kind of trying to move on from it and get strong enough to be able to run again. And so after class, she and I started talking about cycling, and she invited me to go on a bike ride with her. And that was kind of the beginning of what's now been a 10-year amazing close friendship. So shortly after her half Ironman distance triathlon, which requires a 56-mile bike ride, she gets this idea, which would become one of many great ideas that she had, that let's do a century. And a century is a 100-mile bike ride. So Lance Armstrong was bringing his Live Strong challenge to Davis, home of UC Davis, which is about 30 miles or so from us, and she wanted us to sign up for it. So this was yeah. So at the beginning of that same month, so this was June of 2011, I did a 5K. So that was like my first race ever, was a 5K. And then towards the end of that month, we did our century. And it was incredible. It was literally like a life-changing actually experience, because there was a mudslide that happened that ended up changing the course And so what was supposed to be, we had to climb these mountains, and then we were going to have like a 12-mile descent. Because of the mudslide, they had to remove the descent out of it.
Oh.
So we had to summit the mountain. We went down a little bit to where this aid station was. This is about mile 40 of 100. Then we had to re-summit the mountain and go back another way. It also added like 5 or 6 miles. So it ended up being like 105 or 106 miles instead of just 100. Yeah, you're already doing 100 with another 5 or 6 more.
Oh, well, it depends on how you feel after 100.
But the thing that was like so life-changing about it was that there were times when I'm climbing, we were climbing mountains on our bike, and they're curvy roads, and so you're coming around the curve and you're just like literally praying that that's the end of the hill. And
sure.
It's not.
Oh.
And then here's the next one, and it's not. And when you're have any sort of momentum, even the very slow pace that I was going at as I'm going up, just trying to get the pedal over and around the next time around, stopping is like the worst thing. Because now you stop and you try to go again, you're going backwards. Mm-hmm. So there's just no choice but to keep going. And that became the moment, the day that I physically found this like next gear, this next level of what I am capable of. And so that would really kind of it has really informed the rest of my life. Most people don't find that physical place where, it wasn't like a survival situation. I wasn't going to die if I stopped. There's a sag wagon, like they could come and pick me up. It just would be a bummer. But I was able to push through that and find this other gear. Towards the end of the race, or not a race, but towards the end of the event, not only had I summited that mountain twice and got through that thing that I didn't think I could do, but now I was literally pulling grown men behind me.
Oh my.
So in cycling, there's, you can draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like if you watch like the Tour de France, right, they're all really close back to back. And so the more people you have in front of you, essentially, the less work you're doing. And so I was the motivator, the cheerleader, the puller of these other men, particularly this guy, Mike, Rochester Mike, and he was just riding my wheel. And I was strong for him so that he could finish this race.
Amazing.
He was riding for his friend who was dying of cancer.
Oh.
And that leadership kind of that I took on that day by accident, it just kind of happened. And that resilience and that fight that I found that day it was the beginning of my endurance career, and that enabled me, we call it get comfortable being uncomfortable. So physically, that's kind of an easy place to find or to determine. It's harder, I think, to do that in your life.
Agreed.
So choosing to step outside of your comfort zone and do something that's going to be difficult to do and persevere through that. So one of the things that I needed to start was to be able to go back to school.
Okay.
So I now have this kind of outlet, this community of my fitness friends, basically running, cycling, ended up getting to triathlons. I'm not a great swimmer. I'm really good physically. I can pick up anything. So when I'm not good at something physically, it's really difficult. So swimming is just like the one thing. Teach me any sport and I'm right there with you. But swimming is the one thing that's really a challenge for me. So it keeps me humble. But I had that outlet and that sense of control too.
Yes.
That I could put the effort in, you see the results. But I needed to start expanding too, to like what's going to be the rest of my life.
Okay.
So I could be there for Sam, but still I was like 25 at this point, and there's a lot of life ahead of me.
Yes.
And I don't have a degree. Like, what am I going to do? I didn't need to work at that time. We had Sam's income. We were well taken care of as far as that goes. But my brain needed to do things too, besides read to Sam. So I started the process of transferring to Sac State. I needed 10 more units before I could transfer. So, which was nice because it gave me 2 semesters to kind of start to wean away a little bit during the weekdays. And what was nice actually is the school was like 10 minutes away. So that made it simple too. So that first year, and it took a year because there were 2 classes that had to be taken in subsequent semesters. So I took 2 classes one semester and 1 class the next semester to finish. And then I was able to transfer as a junior and start the speech language pathology and audiology program at Sac State.
Fabulous.
So, and then in the meantime, really getting into the fitness stuff, the endurance sports in particular, and then still being there with Sam. And during my undergrad, I usually only had to be on campus 2 days a week. So I was just there on the other days, and then I wasn't there on those school days. And I was typically there on the weekends, except for Saturdays. So I was starting to kind of craft this Erin outside of Sam, both in like the fitness world and then now in the academic professional world as well.
So where are you emotionally at this point? And how does the school creating this Erin, finding Erin outside, how does that affect how you're doing emotionally? And where's God in the mix?
There was a lot of character building, I think, that happened in those years because I think because of how my very early adulthood started, there was, I think, some like social and emotional stunting that had happened.
Okay.
And so I kind of had some hard knocks relationships wise with my friends in college. And we're all on great terms and everything like that. But it was like I had to learn some social graces and friendship things with other women that I really hadn't needed to use before. So emotionally, that was difficult. And spiritually, that was difficult. I went through this one period where it was like a few days where I pissed like 3 or 4 people off completely unintentionally, back to back to back. And it was like, I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And everything I said was just blowing up in my face. And, there's like tests or whatever and like the pressure of that, as well. And so I was sitting in my car and I had a while before I needed to be in class and my Bible was sitting in the passenger seat. And so I grabbed my Bible and I said a prayer, essentially like, show me what I need to read right now. What do you want to tell me? And I think that was actually either the first time I read James or the first time I at least like remember reading James.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's probably it's among my favorite books of the Bible. A tongue is a fire.
Right.
And so I ended up actually I had like Post-it notes and I ended up writing like portions of these scriptures and basically like the things that I was saying, and even though my intent wasn't there, just the harm that you can do with your tongue, and the righteousness of taming the tongue, or that the tongue can't be tamed, and all of this. And reading this, I'm just like in tears and just like so frustrated with myself, but then also so grateful that I had that word. And that was really the first thing as far as like changing myself or praying for myself about anything, like other than praying for an outcome for Sam or for this is where we want to be stationed or whatever.
That's a big shift.
It was the first thing I had ever prayed for that was like, Lord, like help me with this, help change me, that I, my default mode is lifting people up, not
Yeah.
taking people down. And I was always very sarcastic. I mean, I was obnoxious. I was an obnoxious kid, always really sarcastic. And I was getting too old for that, I think, is kind of what was happening. And so that really kind of changed. And it wasn't something for a while. It was something that I was very much focused on as far as in my prayer life, but I don't even think it was something that I was like, all right, be kind, say kind words. Is it helpful? Is it helpful? Is it kind? It just was just kind of like a process that just happened through me, I think.
Sounds like Holy Spirit at work there. I mean, you
Yeah.
asked him for help, and your Bible happens to open to James, which speaks specifically about the power of the tongue to destroy, right?
Yep.
And then it sounds like he started that clay molding process, right?
Yeah.
Of just gradually shifting you once you had the awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And awareness can be painful.
Oh, wow, yes. Right? So it was uncomfortable at 1st. So now you're doing that uncomfortableness and getting used to it outside of sports.
Yeah.
Were there other places that you were asking God to work on you?
Not at that point. I think my growth as a Christian was kind of slow. There was a lot going on. Mostly the first several years kind of being a baby Christian was, I think, more about just grasping in general the gospel.
Makes sense.
And the kind of personal change and sanctification, or at least my awareness of sanctification, took a while. Like that foundation had to be laid first, I think.
That would make perfect sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I feel like I was kind of stagnant probably for a little while, especially with school going on and everything. It was really hard. The one thing I loved, probably the period that I was able to kind of like grow the most and get the most like spiritually, was, so my pastor preaches expositionally, and we will start chapter 1, verse 1 of a book and go all the way through. So while I was an undergrad, we went through, or maybe this might have even gone into grad school too, but we went through the entire book of Genesis, and it took like 2.5 years.
So interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, it was amazing. And there was one kind of, again, there's those like impactful moments in time.
Yes.
Right? The bike ride, whatever. And so he was preaching on, it was when Abraham had to go up to the mountain and sacrifice Isaac. And he emphasizes that the day that Abraham has to go do this and go sacrifice his son, he has to go travel to the mountain in order to do that. And it specifically says Abraham rose early. And so he points out, like, I don't know how you handle things that you don't want to do, but I usually like try to put it off as long as I can. I'm not waking up early to go do something that I don't want to do. You sleep in that day.
Right? Oh, yes.
And so he really emphasizes he rose early to go do this. Is how obedient he was. And that really stuck with me for some reason. And one of the things that I was wanting to do is, nobody has enough time. And I don't have time. I know I need to read my Bible, but I don't have enough time. Insert whatever it is that you wish you were doing more of. You're not doing it because you don't have enough time. You do. You're just putting your priorities in different places. And so there was that. And then I saw a Facebook post of a husband from my church posted this picture of his wife. She's sitting in this big comfy chair with kind of just like a reading light over there. It's kind of dim. You can tell it's early in the morning. She's got a cup of coffee there, and she's sitting there with her Bible open on her lap. And he was just like praising God that he has such a godly wife that gets up early specifically to spend time in the Word before her kids get up. He rose early. And so I was an early riser. It wasn't the waking up early that was the issue. It was what I was doing with the time. And so I would get up early and I would lie around on the couch and I would watch SportsCenter or the news or whatever. And I just, like, hours in the morning, I'd waste 2 hours doing basically nothing. And so I started establishing kind of a morning routine, which started with coffee, prayer, and Bible.
Did you notice any change? I mean, did it have any effect?
I mean, certainly more just kind of like energetic and productive feeling throughout the day. It really
Okay.
set the tone
Mm-hmm.
for the day. I almost like feel like I was getting like a running start to the day for sure. So yeah, that was a big one for me too, because and it also kind of puts you a little bit more in a proactive rather than reactive state as well. You are choosing to carve out this time to do this thing that's important to you rather than, and then you can go take on your day, take on the world rather than just the world coming at you.
That's a super good point. Can we continue this next time?
Absolutely.